Today's process industries face an intersection of capital competitive demands. On the one hand, net zero carbon emission goals are demanding out-of-the-box process innovations that go beyond incremental gains in operational efficiency. And on the other, industry is pushing hard to implement digital solutions that improve economic performance while better leveraging the capabilities of a thinly stretched aging workforce, even as competitive pressures intensify. But do operating companies have to choose between environmental sustainability and economic viability? Hello, this is Keith Larson, editor of Control Magazine and ControlGlobal.com, and thank you for joining me for another Solution Spotlight edition of the Control Amplified podcast, today sponsored by Honeywell Process Solutions. Today, I'm pleased to say we're coming to you live from America's 2022 Honeywell's annual user group meeting, being held this year in Orlando. And joining me today to talk about the synergies between the pursuit of sustainability goals and autonomous operations is John Colpo, Global Manager, Marketing and Strategy for Honeywell's oil and gas business. Welcome, John. Thanks for the hospitality here in Orlando and taking the time out of a very busy schedule to share your insights with us.
It's a pleasure, Keith. Yeah. It's been busy, but fun.
Are you adjusting to the time zone change from Tasmania?
Oh, not quite yet. No,
okay.
I've crashed.
Yeah.
Come back alive, but it's been up and down, but I had a couple of hours sleep last night, so I think we can have a bit of fun.
You'll just be getting it when it's time to go back, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Totally screw you up.
We've had a great turnout in our first face-to-face group since before the pandemic, actually.
Yeah.
It's been good to properly reconnect with everyone. There's a lot happening at the world at the moment, and the discussions we've had with our customers have been amazing.
That's great. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it feels really great to be back in person because the connection is just so much more visceral and so more meaningful than it is over Zoom or GoToMeeting or Teams. Worse yet. Oh, I'm sorry, Microsoft. That's all. But anyway, let's dive right in here. Many oil and gas companies have already committed themselves to really roadmaps designed to bring about net zero operation in years to come. Uh-huh. And those that haven't yet likely will soon. But oil and gas operators especially are leaders in implementing technologies and work process that really advance autonomy and economic performance of their operations. In what ways do you see these initiatives really building upon and synergizing with each other?
Yes, Keith. So many of our upstream and downstream customers have committed to certain goals, as you say, and they're sharing with us at this event the complexities of making progress in the time that they've been set out generally by the board. And some strategies they're finding are more dependent on external factors. So, for example, we may need markets to develop for new low-carbon products like green hydrogen, for example, or perhaps we may need to wait for permanent CO2 sequestration. So these external dependencies make it hard to progress in every capacity, but there is some low-hanging fruit that we've discovered that might be a bit interesting and provide some positive return on investment right up front.
Okay, great. I think one of the things that I've seen is that while process operations are necessarily managed in near real time, ESG is almost done like in the rearview mirror by the month or by the quarter at best. What steps are being taken to unify these management silos and establish a more common reference point between the automation systems and the ESG type of reporting parameters?
I think that's quite normal. I guess the silo effect in organizations is quite well known with each department, especially in upstream, with boards having prioritized greenhouse gas abatement and ESG strategies, which requires significant capital investment. So these have been prioritized over some existing investments around, say, operational excellence or ultimate recovery, and they're sort of bumping against each other. I've talked to a lot of upstream customers, and most have found a good approach which supports the integration of initiatives that may have otherwise been mutually exclusive or overlap. And that's to have a lean ESG department. That department sets strategy, sets targets, designs the technical concepts and benchmarks progress to be made, but leaves the engineering and execution to the individual assets. That way, if several stakeholders need a specific OT or IT, let's say ESG needs greenhouse gas sensing around equipment, and the maintenance department wants CHM sensing on equipment, and operations needs sensing actuators in the equipment, then all this can be implemented in a unified and integrated and fault-tolerant system. Yeah. So a great example of this new type of sensing system is the Versatalis transmitters that we just announced at User Group, and that are unbelievably easy to locate, install, and support sensing for operations and DHM, with more to come, but I can't talk about that yet.
I did see Jason demonstrating the fugitive emission sensors, the wireless devices. Is that more of what you're talking about, or is that a little bit?
That is exactly what I'm not going to talk about.
Well, yeah, I mean, he did say they were coming later this year, so he's already told 1,000 people from the stage, so I guess I can still into that contest, but
yeah,
that's okay. You can toe the company line, but I think that's tremendous, because I think fugitive emissions is one of those things that needs more attention, because when you think of methane having an order of magnitude more effect than carbon dioxide as a greenhouse gas, it's a critical thing to get a handle on.
23 times after 100 years, and I think 80 something.
Oh yeah, and it persists longer as well. That's true. So we'll look forward to more information on that when it's ready later this year, as I understand. So
it'll be soon.
Soon. That sounds great. Sorry, I didn't mean to pull the covers off too far, but Jason did it ahead of you, so I think we'll be okay. What other strategies and best practices are oil and gas companies using to better manage their performance and direct their investments against these twin objectives? Do you have any specific things?
Yeah, well, I'll return to the point I made about external dependencies. So any progress requires investment, and that investment needs to be carried by the company's cash flow. So various strategies make sense only somewhere along the timeline that the board has set up for each of the abatement milestones. So not everything can be done at once. It would be impossible and risky. So we have to ask ourselves, what should be done first? So it's well known that there are 4 main methods of abating greenhouse gases, and these are based on the eliminate, reduce, substitute, and compensate method. So I'm going to apologise. It's going to be a little bit hard to follow a lot of detail here, but I assure everyone it's worth knowing. The first is monitoring compliance and mitigating those fugitive emissions and reducing unplanned flaring as much as possible. So that solves the eliminate leg. Then you've got optimization and electrification. We'll talk more about those later, and they solve the reduce. Third includes transitioning your products and fuel imports, so transitioning to biofuels, renewable products, and things like renewable hydrogen, and also includes carbon capture and sequestration. So compensation, the last one, that's more about carbon credits and direct air capture of CO2. So amongst others, optimization is the low-hanging fruit in this sort of tree of strategies. So optimization, or as we prefer to look at it, industrial autonomous, is itself a large topic, but it has many components that can be implemented much sooner than some of the, and less dependencies, and provides positive cash flow in the shortest time. So that, as you were saying, Keith, it can help provide some of the capital that's required for the other levers that we would be implementing later in the program.
Yeah, that makes sense. Look, turning from the sustainability more to the autonomous that you were talking about, the industrial autonomous. You've described kind of while we're talking about sets of 4s, there's a 4-step maturity model on autonomy as well.
5.
Is it 5? Okay, maybe. There's 5. All right, now we got all kinds of surprises. Can you kind of walk us through those 5 stages of maturity, and how an oil and gas company's maturity on that scale can really correlate with improved sustainability performance and not be mutually exclusive?
Yeah. Love to. So, so our maturity model for autonomous operations was proposed by Jason, our CTO, a couple of years ago. to help us and to help our customers better focus our efforts. And so it does have 5 layers. So it's a big topic. I am feeling a bit challenged to simplify.
We're only covering the vague outlines at this point. I'm afraid. We'll do 5 more on these different stages. Okay.
There we go. I can come back.
There you go.
But we will cover it now, and I'll certainly do my best here. So we have 5 layers. So the first, and we have to acknowledge that most upstream players are already a tier or above, and many of the elements of these 5 are implemented, by many of our upstream customers and so on. So no judgment. It's just a way of labeling and focusing our efforts. So
it's a journey. Different people are at different corners in the road, but this is the whole. This is the full road.
Exactly, and you can be implementing elements of the top one and not have done all of the elements of the third layer, that sort of thing. So but anyway, it's good to have a framework so you can sort of tick off all of the opportunities and work out. Some of these are interdependent, so work out the interdependencies a little bit better. Yeah. So the first layer, controlled and optimized. So this is where every item of equipment on the process is fully automated, I should say, not and more progressive techniques like advanced model-based advanced process control is implemented, and that is brilliant at stabilizing processes, equipment, and improving production, but at the same time, and here's where it starts to count for greenhouse gas abatement. It reduces inputs like energy, so reducing fuel that's consumed. So less fuel consumed, less goes out the exhaust and into the atmosphere. A few more techniques, advanced alarm management, just keeping that working asset, controlled and operated safely and in an optimized way. So you wouldn't say that everyone's at that level, but a lot of players in the upstream world are operating on that. So moving on to then the next second, so intelligent operations. So here we begin to look at lowering the cost of operations, and so one of the biggest payrolls in an upstream organisation is, for example, the maintenance department, and they're often not accused. Let's say they're often find themselves doing work that results in sort of no action. So, for example, my daughter's learning to drive now, and I described to her that her tyres need to be checked every week. And if she doesn't check her tyres, the pressure will go down and she'll wear out that tyre immediately and have to pay, for a new tyre. So when she goes to that tyre every week to check the pressure and finds that the pressure is okay, she's annoyed. Like, she didn't have to do it.
Right.
I made her do it. And that's what maintenance is like, all this sort of legacy preventative maintenance, periodic maintenance, results in a lot of unnecessary work. So
going through the motions, or at least that's how technicians feel. They're not really doing anything beneficial. So predictive maintenance, so where you operate the equipment to the point where it's just about to fail. It's just, something's just about to go wrong. So you've got the maximum use you can out of that metal that you've bought, out of electronics and everything. So how do you find that point in time that now's the right time to maybe stop that equipment, switch over to the standby, and get someone out there to fix it up? So that's preventative maintenance. So you need a bit of IT, a bit of nous to do that. So we've got a great for JPM and these new Visitalis transmitters, for example. We've got a great EHM technique that enables our upstream customer, not just upstream customers, everyone. It's pretty usable across industrial applications.
Yes, exactly. To to transform maintenance to preventative maintenance, to sort of condition-based maintenance is another name for it. Anyway, that's just one example. I need to be a bit more comprehensive, I guess.
I think one of the interesting things about some of those preventive maintenance strategies, sometimes you do more harm than good by, checking things or doing some proactive measure that doesn't need to be done. Sometimes you cause more problems than you cure. Yeah.
You sound like you've worked in the industry, because that is true.
It has been a while.
The life cycle of some multi-million-dollar valves in upstream, in fact, is about 10 operations, and you're required by law to test them. So you might actually have only 5 operations in real life because you've wasted 5 testing. So you're spot on.
Yeah, that's frustrating.
Just completing level 2 here. So so this is where we begin beginning to integrate operations, the different sort of disciplines, and maybe looking at sharing some of the know-how between assets. There's the workforce, that said that it's aging and it's difficult to replace people with know-how. So begin to look at implementing some OT and IT that can help some of that collaboration and multi-skilling, and so on. So, moving on. So, level 3, we've got remote operations. So here's where we begin to seriously look at transforming our assets. So we take every asset will have its own control room. So here's where we seriously say, well, a lot of people are going to have a good improvement in life because they're not going to have to go out to this oil and gas asset. We're going to stretch that control room and bring it all the way into town. Yeah. We're going to operate that asset. We're going to operate other assets from that remote operations center. Yeah. And we've got some great technology for that in Experion. And what that allows is to bring the staff into, closer, they can live closer to home, spend less time on the road, and they can be involved. Your best staff can be involved in operating several assets.
I expect the pandemic certainly accelerated development and acceptance of those technologies too. Yeah,
you wouldn't. Yes, exactly. We've seen. I guess even in everyone's workplace, remote operation has just become the norm.
Absolutely.
What I want to say about this level is it sounds advanced and it sounds like it needs IoT and all that, but in fact, that level of remote operations has been quite common with many of our progressive upstream customers for some time. Yeah. So it's been very achievable, and it's really, that sort of leaves a lot of good stuff yet to come because IoT is quite amazing and has sort of revolutionized how things can be done, and we haven't even begun to use that. So, so moving on to level number 4. Okay. So this is the level we're looking at, resilience. So we're looking at improving fault tolerance so that the asset and equipment remains, which has been simplified. There are typically no or fewer people around. If there are people around, they're less expert and so on. So it needs to be self-healing and fault tolerant. And there are great technologies that have come out of the IoT or the industry version 4.0 sort of paradigm or revolution. So this is where, cloud, remote sensing, all that sort of cool stuff gets involved.
I would imagine even this, the IO Hive and Control Hive principles where you can have distributed backups that switch over automatically and can fill in for each other. That's another thing that you don't need somebody there on site to shepherd that in.
That abstraction between the sort of physical things and their sort of virtual avatar. Has been a really powerful enabler of not only improving the fault tolerance of everything, but being able to remove this sort of trap of where things are located. Things can be done from anywhere. Anything can be done from anywhere these days. Control, operations, human interaction, sensing, and so on.
It's just a change of paradigm that's going to take everybody a little little while to get used to it. Yeah, I think
but it's working.
Definitely, I think it does. It's great.
Yeah. And then finally, this is finally level 5 autonomous. So it's true. Like not everything has been solved yet. We've got some use cases for the drones and robots, and most upstream players are piloting. But it's exciting. Some of this is already achievable, and it's only going to evolve. So as soon as we think we got there with how we're going to use robotics and drones and machine learning now, sort of basically I think already done. Artificial intelligence I think is already done. As soon as we think we get there, I think the horizon's going to move on us. The goalpost will move. So that's. I probably spoke a bit too long, but
no, that's okay. No, that's good. Because I really think that the oil and gas majors and a lot of the progressive companies there have really paved the way on this autonomy maturity model, and yet they're also under perhaps the most scrutiny around sustainability. What lessons can other industry players learn from the examples or the lessons being learned by oil and gas companies? What are there key strategies that they should adopt first? What lessons would you recommend?
Good point, Keith. I think much of what we've discussed can be applied across other hard-to-abate industries. So these might be sort of conventional power generation, steel and cement. So there you've got possibly 70% of greenhouse gas emissions just in those three industries alone. So concepts like remote operations and integrated operations have been, as you're saying, Keith, have been common in oil and gas for some time, but those same concepts can apply to these industries, and that will lead to the same reduced costs and operations. So again, it can be done early. There are fewer dependencies in some of the other abatement strategies, and can provide positive cash flow much sooner than the more radical abatement levers that we discussed.
Okay, great. Well, thanks so much, John, for sharing your perspective with us today. It's been thought-provoking and a real pleasure. Once again, my guest today has been John Colpo, responsible for Global Marketing and Strategy Lead for Honeywell Process Solutions Oil and Gas Business. So thank you all for tuning in, and thanks to Honeywell for sponsoring this episode. My name's Keith Larson, and you've been listening to a Control Amplified podcast. And if you've enjoyed this episode, you can subscribe at the iTunes Store and at Google Podcasts. Plus, you can find the full archive of past episodes at controlglobal.com. Signing off until next time. It's really such a pleasure to have you here in person. It's much more fun to do this in person than...
So is Keith.
All right. Next one we'll do over a beer.
Okay.
All right. Deal.